Right, when you're in the shop, you're wearing safety glasses all the time. That's required. Now, when you're doing some wood turning, you also need to have a face shield on. We have 6 face shields here. On the other side of the shop, there are more face shields. These are good ones to use. Sometimes they're a little dusty. There's a rag sitting right here. You can take and wipe the dust off, put the rag back, and then you put on the face shield. Now, it has an adjusting screw in the back, so you should be able to put it on your head like this, loosen that up, tighten it down, so you can do this with the face shield. It goes up and down. Okay? There's the face shield. That's your protection for your eyes. If you've got long hair, it could get caught in the lathe. You do not want this to happen. You don't want your hair to get caught in something and spun onto that lathe. Double tie it up if you need to, whatever you need to do, so it is not hanging out loose. Same goes with your clothes. You don't want any clothing. This sleeve is a little loose. It could get stuck in there, and that'll pull you in. It'll do damage. You do not want anything loose. If you just simply pull up a sleeve of a sweatshirt, it's going to start working its way down during the day, and you're going to forget about it. If you have a long sleeve, you either have to roll it up or take it off so that you just have bare skin. Nothing is going to get caught. If you have dangling jewelry, take it off. If you have dangling earrings, I don't have any, but if you've got dangling jewelry, take it all off, put it in your pocket. This is a wood lathe. There's several parts. There is the banjo that's attached to the bed. The tool rest sits on top of the banjo. The tailstock is also attached to the bed. The headstock is what drives the stock. This wheel will be spinning. The speed control is here. There's an on-off switch, on, off, and then a dial that has a variable range for speeds. There's a small tool caddy attached to keep tools when they're not in use. This little piece is called the drive spur. It's what you poke into your wood to make it turn. It's hooked into the headstock. There's another one just like this that's already in here. Now I'm going to show you how to take that out. This tool, which stays in this hole in the caddy, is the drift rod. It pokes into a hole in the end of the headstock, and it's going to poke against this drive spur and make it come out. Watch. It would have been better if I caught that, so I'm going to put my hand here to catch it. If you drop it, it makes it dent and get dull. So please catch the drive spur. When you're not using it, you can put it here, and these go back. I'll show you what to do with this drive spur next. This is the chunk of wood that we're going to be turning. It's called the stock. I've already marked X's on the end of it. You see those X's there? Oops, there they are. So I can get the center. The point of the drive spur I put on the center of the end. I have this mallet, a wooden mallet. Don't use a hammer, use a wooden mallet, and tap it in firmly. Be on top of a solid table. Never use the bed of the lathe. If you're tapping on here, you could break the bed. These beds are made of cast iron. They are brittle. They will break, so don't hammer on them. The next step is to take the drive spur and put it into the headstock. I'm going to move the tailstock in close enough so I can tighten it down and then line up. There's a point that I'm aiming with to the center of the stock, and then I'm tightening up the tailstock to get it to support the board in there, so it's in there nice and firmly. And now you're viewing this from the other side. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to loosen up the tailstock. This screw pulls this spindle in and out. I'm backing it up so it's coming into the tailstock. This handle here tightens this way. If you get it very tight, tightens a cam that keeps this tailstock from sliding. So if I want it not to slide, I move it up about where I want it to be and then tighten it firmly, very firmly. This is a lock nut which must be loosened only 1/4 of a turn, no more. And then that allows you to turn the screw, tighten up the work. There we go. It's in there nice and tightly. I can feel that it's in there firmly and it's not going to wobble. Then I'll take and gently tighten this lock nut. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about this lock nut here. This part here that spins is called a live center. It holds one end of your stock. I'm just going to take that out. I want you to see the spindle here. It has a groove along here. This is a nut. I mean, not a nut, it's actually a bolt that fits into this hole. And when it's inside the hole, it pushes into that groove. Now, it's very important that it stays in that groove so that this spindle does not turn. When you're tightening the spindle, you turn this here, and if you are not careful, it'll spin around like that, and it won't do its job. It needs to stay aligned with this hole. The only way to keep it aligned with that hole is to have this lock nut in there. So this lock nut screws into this hole, it stays in there. You never have a reason to take that out like I just did. Now it's snug against the bottom of this groove, and you can't turn the spindle easily. In fact, you would ruin it if you tried turning it with this lock nut tightened. So you have to loosen the lock nut a bit, but remember, don't loosen it that much because then this will spin. You only need to loosen it this much, about a quarter of a turn, then the spindle will move back and forth properly. When you get it to the position you want, then you gently tighten this. Most of you are strong enough that if you used all of your strength to tighten this, you would break the threads inside here. This metal will break rather easily, so don't use all of your force on this part. I sprinkled sawdust on the bed of the lathe. I'm going to show you something that happens if you don't get this lever tight enough. So I'm just going to tug it there, just a little tiny push. I'm going to tighten the screw on the tailstock to push the spindle against the wood. To do that, I have to loosen this lock nut first, just a quarter of a turn that we've talked about, and then I'm going to turn this. Now I want you to notice what's happening down here. As I turn the screw, the tailstock is sliding that way. You can see where the sawdust is, where it was left. What to do? This cam lever has to be tightened more tightly. This one can take a lot of force. You need to push hard on this one. Some of you, it'll be your full strength. Now when I tighten this, I'll move the sawdust down so you can see it doesn't move so much. It doesn't move. And that's as tight as we need it. We don't really need it super, super tight. Now I'm going to adjust the banjo and the tool rest. There's two levers here. This one, again, you can use a lot of force on this lever if you need to, and then there's a lock nut here which you use less force on. The tool rest needs to be set at a particular height, which is a little bit below, maybe a quarter of an inch below the center line that runs through the spindles. So I'll tighten this nut here, not over tighten, but tight enough, and then I'll be able to move this around to get it up close to the wood. Now you want to get it up close to your stock. You always are going to have your tool rest close to the stock, but of course it can't be bumping. So you turn the stock, make sure you've cleared it, and then tighten this cam lever. After you've tightened it, make another turn. You have to make a full turn of the stock to make sure it's not hitting. It's still hitting there, so I'm going to adjust it a little more so it doesn't hit. There we go. Don't ever put your fingers in there. You get pinched and you get your finger torn apart. That's not where you want your finger. Okay, the tool rest is set now. It's firm. It's not going to move. You want to make sure it doesn't move and that you can turn the wood a full turn. Before starting up the lathe for the first time in any project, you want to make sure that the speed is low. So it's in the off position, and I'm turning it counterclockwise so this little white dot is pointing down here. If I turn it this way, it's going to go faster. Sometimes a piece of work will split apart or be really off balance when you start. So you have to start in the lowest speed, and then later you can move this up to get a higher speed.